So thank you in advance, Renate.
No
Our first question is, what does the word collaboration mean in journalism today, or today journalism?
Well, yeah, as we said, it means several things. It means collaboration between different news outlets, which I think has always been on the one hand. On the other hand, now with the very dire situation of media, who are at the same time competitors, but also have to survive in the market, I think there are some new ways of doing so. Because we also have a new phenomenon of journalists becoming their own publishers and starting their digital startups, sometimes 2-3 people, and then they join with others. And then, of course, we have the collaborations in cross-border investigative journalism level, where this is Panama Papers is probably par excellence one of the best or most successful known collaborative journalist works, but there are quite a few others. This is very much based, as you said, on investigative journalism. And investigative journalism, as we know, is very expensive. So it's either the big, most successful media outlets, or it's smaller ones who get grants. And we know there are quite a bit of European grants that help on that, and there are other grants, but that often remains in a niche position. Third thing is, of course, it's also journalists working with communities at local level, with readers, and trying to engage in new ways.
What has the Panama Paper meant for journalism and collaborative journalism?
I think it has shown that journalism is still so strong that it's able to get rid of governments. I mean, Panama Papers was an excellent example. The government, was it Iceland? Well, fell, and it showed the importance of that work and the impact on politics at national level. And it also showed how very complicated it is. And even Daphne Caruana Galizia, who was involved in the Panama Papers, lost her life. I think something to remember as well.
Do you think collaborative journalism is just a trend, or is we are in the face of a structural change in journalism?
What did you say the first word was?
Trend. Is it just a trend, or we are watching journalism going to more collaborative waves, from competitive to collaborative?
Maybe it's too early to say, but I think we are at a new path because we have no business models in journalism anymore. Let's face it. So the concept of mass media is completely collapsing. It's just so we have to look at new innovative models, and there is also the terms like constructive journalism, collaborative journalism, you name them, cooperative. There are different ways, still all in niche functions, but I think all of them very, very important, also to keep the idea of journalism as a public good, because we're losing that. It's clickbait journalism, there is a lot of journalism which is completely commercialized, and we need these new ways urgently.
How is the level of collaborative journalism in Europe, if you can specify, not necessarily, compared to other continents?
Well, I think, as so often when we look at journalists or new trends, a lot comes from the United States. But at the same time, in the United States, the situation is even more dire than in Europe. We're talking about news deserts and talking about a few conglomerates, but really public interest journalism is like that. At the same time, the states are very much influenced on foundations, so they have a lot of foundations, money, doing things like that, Niemann's Lab, whatever. So that's very useful. It's slowly changing in Europe. Even the concept that foundations are also paying for journalism is a new concept. I know from Germany, for example, they are trying also to change the law to get tax incentives, foundations paying for journalism, because we all know it's missing. So it's slowly growing in Europe, but maybe too slowly, I think. I think there needs, the European Commission, rightly so, has done some very interesting initiatives. as I said, some foundations, some grants. In some countries, we have independent investigative journalism funds, like here in Belgium, Pascal de Pose. The Dutch are quite good at innovative, collaborative new models. In Germany, they are trying, but it's more the bigger countries. I think in Spain, as I said, our study showed there is also quite a bit of innovation, but money is missing. So it's a slow progress, but I think we need also politicians and public money to get in there.
What are 3 positive aspects of collaborative journalism, and if any negative aspects related to?
Well, from what I can say, positive aspects, of course, one is, as we mentioned before, the Panama Papers. It's the beauty of collaborating at different international scales, because you work with different journalists with different backgrounds, different cultures, and this is as rich as you can imagine. You couldn't do that if you only worked from your national perspective. I think we are in a phase where we are going back to nationalistic perspectives, and that's why we know right-wing extremism everywhere. That's why it's so important to invest there and to get other sides as well. We know that people read Panama Papers are mostly an elite, which is already a bit more open. And that's why, second point, collaborative journalism is also so important at local level, to collaborate with the readers, with young people, with different communities, to get them back into the mainstream, to integrate them, to be inclusive, what have you. So this is the second, I think, very good point. And the third is just to be part of the importance of public interest journalism, to also give journalists hope. Many journalists are leaving the profession. They are frustrated. They don't do their vocation anymore. There is a lot of burnout. We just started a study there. There is harassment. Sometimes you say, why are they still doing it? What's in there for them? And these are new ways, I think.
It's so interesting, Renate. And do you see anything negative related to collaborative journalism or collaboration? Is there any negative aspect?
What do you mean by negative aspects?
Problems related to collaborative difficulties?
Well, yes,
to collaborate,
of course. There are many different... I'm working very much at the moment on the European Media Freedom Act, and that's also to get some harmonization on very important issues regarding how journalists work, specifically because there's more cross-border investigative journalism projects. One is protection of sources and protection from surveillance measures, and we have very different situations in Europe, and we want to get it at a higher level. Unfortunately, at the moment in the Council, it seems national security is more important for member states than press freedom in the end. But we are working very hard to get higher standard on protection of sources and Pegasus and all these spywares against journalists. Very, very important. So that's, for me, one very important thing. The second is also coming to this European Media Freedom Act is editorial independence, how to ensure, maybe it's already more given in collaborative journalism things. I don't think the problem of editorial independence is the main thing. Funding, of course, is the main challenge. That's very clear.
Important. What type of media or journalists are better equipped or prepared to collaborate across borders or?
That's difficult to say, because from the bigger projects, again, Panama Papers, it's the established legacy media who is doing that, be it public service media or sort of print online. For smaller projects, I think it can also be very interesting to have new innovative digital startups who come with new visions and new ideas, and younger people much more open to new ways of collaboration.
Is there gender balance in collaborative journalism?
To be honest, I don't really know. I'm a bit afraid that it's still more male-dominated, specifically when we look at the investigative journalism part. But you are doing the research there.
In the other interviews, they told us that they find there are as many women as men.
Well, that's
but we
good
were
to know. Yeah,
I
no,
didn't
don't
expect
know.
it
We
that-
haven't done any study on that.
I don't know either.
yeah.
So, but we will do something on that.
I think one problem we generally have, because in smaller projects it's very time invested. People work because it's their vocation. They don't think of deadlines. And it's always the problem when we have women at some point having families that it's becoming more difficult.
It's very
and
difficult.
Unfortunately, we don't have the gender balance there yet.
It's a personal sacrifice at every level. So, regarding promoting collaborative journalism as an institution that is promoting it, why has your institution evolved into promoting collaborative projects? How the idea came about?
We are not as such promoting collaborative journalism. We are promoting anything that has to do with public interest or journalism as a public good, independent journalism, ethical journalism, professional journalism. As we are a European federation, of course, we are very interested in any kind of collaboration, cooperation, and that is a very beautiful model we cannot but support.
What are the things that are easy to do when developing collaborative projects, and what are the barriers?
The barriers, again, if you talk at cross-border level, is different cultures, different legislations. I mean, when you work with the Hungarian media, there are still a few independents, it's of course very difficult for the reasons I also said before. And on smaller scale, I still think it's the funding question. It's very often they work from grant to grant, but journalists are not made to write project applications. They are there to do the journalism, and often they have to deal with finances now as well. So this is
difficult
challenge.
And as for what would I say, supporting collaborative journalism, is there any result or that you are proud of, that you have helped to move or whatever?
Well, I can only say at the moment, and I also have to say this is thanks to the European Commission, we are involved in 2 projects, and one is specifically cross-border local journalism with Journalism Fund. You talk to them,
yes.
And our part there is actually giving safety training to the journalists involved. As we said, journalism has become a very dangerous job, and digital security and protection of sources, these are all very important issues. Risk assessment we are doing. Often first the journalists say, we don't need safety training, no problem. And then they realize, there is actually potential risk at many, many issues. And I think the EFJ has been able to promote the safety at a very professional level. So I can say I'm proud of that.
Safety,
it's not directly
safety awareness too, no?
Safety
Training
awareness, and at cross-border level, that's very important. And the other projects we are doing now is, well, it's more on local media. We are working with Florence, CMPF, on analyzing where are the news deserts in Europe. And then this is number 1. We will have first results next week. And then we are trying to also get funding there, but we will also do a lot of analysis. And at some point, we will also come back specifically also with the first cross-border local journalism thing. We are organizing a conference in Croatia. And it may be very interesting also to get some of your results to feed it in. There.
Okay. What institutions would you highlight that are helping to support collaborative journalism besides yours?
Yeah, ours indirectly. We are a federation of
we know,
unions and associations, so we are there to help. And to be honest, I don't really know. I mean, the ones we mentioned, we talked about, and then at national level, probably a lot of foundations.
This is just in case No, I know, but this helps us to identify actors.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry for that.
Next one is, what kind of activity do you think is more necessary for journalists to help them do collaborative projects, training, grants, innovation, technology, networks, mentoring? What would be
all of that?
All of it.
Absolutely. Training is always crucial. And we also feel that the employers these days don't do enough training. I mean, we are living at times where artificial intelligence is all over, and it will be used, it is being used, it will be more used, and it's potentially very helpful, but we have to get it right. We have to deal with ethical issues, we have to deal with authors' rights, and of course with the financial part. So this is very, very important for all kind of journalism, but I think including collaborative journalism, of course. Also the authors' rights question is an important one still. And yeah, training. Of course, the working conditions. This again is not only collaborative journalism, but sometimes journalists in such projects, they forget that they actually do a job where they should get paid for and still have decent working conditions and not work 24 hours. The beauty of collaborative journalism is that you don't follow the 24 hours news, so maybe it gives you the chance to dig a bit deeper into it. And for that you need the right tools, and as I said, also digital security.
We are almost finished, but two more questions. One is about journalism schools. Do you think it is necessary to integrate collaborative journalism training for the students now studying journalism? And what would be important to teach them about collaborative journalism?
Well, yeah, I think it is important, and not only collaborative journalism, but also to show the young people that starting as a journalist is not easy. Most of them start as freelancers, earning very little. So they have to be open, they have to be well trained, and including on collaborative journalism. And for that, of course, they also have to know, because we see that now in many digital startups, the young, they don't know anymore what means a press codex, what means ethical journalism, journalistic standards, and also the legal environment. What are your rights? What are your duties? And this goes for any journalism, but it also goes, if collaborative journalism wants to succeed and be trusted and trustful, it's very important that the journalists know their trade. And I think I would really pledge for that.
And finally, thoughts. You have shared some of it, but spontaneously. But just this is for the Ibero-American study on local newsrooms, because we are doing this. One, collaboration with artificial intelligence to write texts.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, as I said before, I think first it's unavoidable. It's already done. It can be very useful. It can help journalists to not deal with boring things, but as I said, to dig deeper into it. But, and this is very important, there must be a legal framework, there must be conditions. The author's rights part is very important, also for the reader. If there is an AI promoted article, it should be there somewhere. And of course, the question of redistribution, of author's rights, of ethical standards, because if it's a machine that deals with it, who is dealing with the ethics? And the journalist has always to be on top of it. He has to control it. He has to use the machines as a tool, but not vice versa. I think that goes anywhere with AI, if it's in medicine or not, but it's also very important. For journalism, we're dealing a lot with deep fakes, with disinformation, and imagine where we could go. It's potentially very scary, and we have to take it very, very seriously.
Second, participatory journalism, collaboration with the audience.
Right. Yeah, that's very important. As I said before, I think it's also important because we have a problem with trust in journalism. There is not enough trust. We face unprecedented attacks by by citizens against journalists, specifically since COVID, because journalists have been seen too close to the governments, or in other countries it's the politicians who are against the journalists because journalists have been too critical. They never do it right, one could say. And they need the audience as their allies. Without them, they're nothing. So this allows them to go back to the audience, to go to the different groups of audience, young, older, women, what have you, and ask them also, what are you interested in? What should we talk? Have discussions. Be transparent. We talk about meaningful transparency. It's a term from Finland, and I think it's so important. And that allows also to create more meaningful transparency.
And last one, what about small media, local media? How can they collaborate?
Yeah.
You have already said, but...
Exactly. Small local media are so important. Especially the problem is often they don't exist anymore. So we have to also rethink how we get them. And maybe such projects and some funding could help to reinvest in local media. I think that's very important. And the other one is local media. They could do so many things, and even collaboration. We had in this one project between two cities or two cities of different countries. There are so many potential interesting projects, but it means a bit of time, and it needs to get rid a little bit of the news agenda and allow, and that must be the employer or whoever, to allow this creative room for collaborative projects. It's happening in slowly. We had a project on trust in journalism where we were looking for some projects in France as well. There were some very interesting collaborative projects reaching out at local level to the citizens and even having meetings about deciding together the news agenda. Very interesting things, but it's still niche. We need more of that.
Renate, that's it.
I did the global